The joke that ended everything. It began like any ordinary Friday evening. Dinner plans with a few of her coworkers, the usual laughter, and a bit too much wine. I went along reluctantly, only because she insisted. "Come on, it'll be fun," she said that morning with a teasing grin. I already knew what her office crowd was like, loud, flirty, and always crossing lines once the drinks started flowing. Still, I decided to go, wanting to show my support. We arrived at the restaurant around 7. The jokes were already flying fast. Her friends were half drunk, her boss was trying too hard to be charming, and Emma, my wife, was basking in all the attention. At first, I didn't mind. I'd always admired her confidence. But by dessert, something in the air shifted. That electric tension that comes when people forget where the boundaries are. Then it happened. Almost like fate had planned a cruel trick. One of her coworkers, a loud guy named Rick, started cracking jokes about relationships, comparing exes to current partners. He turned to her and said, half laughing, half slurring, "So Emma, who was better? Your husband, or that gym guy you used to date?" I expected her to roll her eyes or tell him off. Instead, she looked right at me, smirked, and said, "Well, let's just say my ex was bigger." The whole table burst out laughing. Some laughed awkwardly, others glanced away, visibly uncomfortable. My chest tightened. Her tone might have been playful, but her words cut deep. She had just humiliated me, in public, in front of her boss, her friends, and a handful of strangers. I felt my face heat up. For a second, I thought about walking out. But then something inside me snapped, that quiet, weary part that had endured years of small jabs, casual disrespect, and harmless teasing. So I smiled, calm, cold, and steady. "You're right," I said. "He was bigger. That's why he couldn't stay. Too much ego, not enough depth." The laughter died instantly. Her smile froze mid-expression. Rick nearly choked on his drink. Her boss looked like he wanted to disappear. I leaned back, still composed, and added, "And I suppose that's why you ended up with me, someone patient enough to handle your immaturity." Then I raised my glass and finished, "Here's to the small things. They tend to last longer." Her face went pale. She tried to brush it off with a nervous laugh, mumbling, "I was just joking." But it was too late. The entire table went quiet. People shifted awkwardly, avoiding eye contact. Even the waiter looked uncomfortable as he refilled our glasses. I saw it in her eyes, that flicker of realization when someone finally understands they've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I didn't shout. I didn't get angry. I didn't need to. My silence spoke louder than any outburst ever could. After a long pause, I stood, placed a few bills on the table, and said evenly, "Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone. I'll leave you to your jokes." Then I walked out into the cool night air, my hands trembling slightly, not from anger, but from release. For years, I'd been her emotional punching bag. The man she teased for being too serious, too steady, not spontaneous enough. But standing there under the streetlights, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. I drove home, packed a small bag, and waited. When she finally stumbled in later that night, her eyes red and her voice shaking, I was already at the door. "You're really leaving over a joke?" she asked, her voice breaking. I looked at her quietly. "No, I'm leaving because it wasn't a joke. It was the truth, and you finally said it out loud." She began to cry, reaching for me. "Please, you're overreacting. It was stupid. I didn't mean it." I shook my head. "No, Emma. It was honest. You showed everyone how little respect you have for me. And I can't stay married to someone who treats me like the punchline." I walked past her, through the doorway of a house that had once been a home, now nothing more than a stage for her performances. She followed me onto the porch, crying, shouting, begging me to come back. But I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove away. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. She called. She texted. She even came by my office, crying, apologizing, promising to change. But something inside me had already gone quiet. Once respect dies, love doesn't survive for long. I focused on myself instead. Started hitting the gym. Took on a new job. Moved into a small apartment that, ironically, felt more like home than the big, hollow house we once shared. Her friends reached out occasionally, saying she wasn't the same anymore. That she'd become quiet, withdrawn, full of regret. I never replied. She'd made her joke. I'd delivered my punchline. A year later, I saw her again at a cafe. She looked older, tired, like the weight of her choices had finally settled in. She gave me a faint smile. "You look good," she said softly. I nodded. "Thanks." I guess I had some growing to do. Her lips trembled as she looked down. I wish I hadn't said that night. I leaned slightly forward, offered a calm smile, and replied, "So do I. But then again, maybe I needed that moment to remember my worth." I placed a few bills on the counter, stood up, and walked out, calm, collected, and finally free.